The hangar lights were dim, catching on the matte surface of the ancient ship like sunlight on black ice. Every expert in the galaxy had tried to wake its scientists, engineers, even telepaths from 3 different worlds. The thing had slept through it all, quiet and stubborn. A metal ghost from a civilization that vanished before the first. Human ever cracked fire from stone, and then the human pilot walked in. She, an alien girl from Lumio, thought she'd seen bold creatures before. Yet nothing compared to the curious fool who stepped up to the ancient craft, wiped dust from its hull, and said softly, almost in apology, "Mind if I try?" The alien girl's jaw had tightened. They'd spent years decoding fragments of data, running tests, playing tones of long-dead languages. That ship hadn't so much as flickered. The human didn't even have a translator band on. He just stared at the curving hull, tracing faint engravings with his bare hands. His expression caught somewhere between a smile and a confession. At first glance, there was no reason to pay him any mind. Humans were latecomers to interstellar flight. Their technology was rough, their instincts reckless. Curious, yes. Persistent, too. But ancient ships like this one were supposed to respond only to higher resonance, the kind aligned with long-forgotten biometrics. Species like hers, the delicate, luminous kind whose ancestors once brushed against the old makers, were considered compatible. And even they couldn't wake the machine. The human took a quiet breath, adjusted his gloves as if he were about to fly an old Earth's cargo hauler, and placed his palm against the control node. Everyone held still. The room's hum faded. The air changed. For the first time in centuries. The ship responded. Lights threaded down its hull, slow and shy at first, then alive and pulsing. The ground vibrated not violently, but like the heartbeat of a creature just waking from a long coma. The alien girl's eyes widened, her luminous pupils narrowing against the sudden glow. Her pulse spiked. Her head was full of questions that tripped over each other. How could a human born on a world that hadn't even existed when this ship was built lock a relic of the ancients? He looked up, caught her gaze, and grinned. Not arrogant, not frightened. Simply glad to see it worked. No one else in the hangar moved. The sound of metal awake again was something close to music. It wasn't mechanical. It was alive like a whale calling through deep water. The technicians stumbled backward. The alien girl barely noticed. Her focus was fixed on the human standing at the edge of the ramp, light blooming behind him. It wasn't supposed to be like this. The ship had been her obsession for half her life, her dream, her failure. Every night since its discovery, she had walked its silent corridors, imagining what it would be like to see its lights burn again. She'd even talk to it sometimes when no one was around. A quiet ritual. A polite greeting to a god that never answered. Now this stranger species dismissed as primitive. By most galactic scholars had spoken its secret language without even knowing it existed. The human stepped slowly inside. The ship's glow rippled in response, casting a gold shimmer across his flight jacket. "What's it doing?" One of the technicians whispered. "Listening," said the girl. She wasn't sure how she knew, but she felt it a subtle pull in the air, a recognition happening beyond the senses, somewhere deep in its circuitry. The ancient vessel had found something it had been waiting for. She followed, drawn in despite herself. The ramp sighed under her boots. Inside smelled of ozone and time. Ancient symbols flowed faintly across the walls, rearranging themselves as though trying to recall lost meanings. The human brushed his fingers over them as if greeting old friends. He wasn't trained for this. Every part of her rational mind screamed that he should step away before he broke something impossible to fix. But another part, somehow older, deeper, whispered that the ship wasn't in danger. They were. "Hey," she said finally, finding her voice. "I don't know what you just did. But whatever it is, Don't push it. This isn't some fighter craft. It's older than the idea of gravity drives. You could burn yourself." He looked back, light dancing in his eyes. "Then tell it to be gentle." His tone was teasing, but there was something under it, a quiet certainty, as if he recognized the hum beneath the floor. The ship's panels began to move like rippling skin, forming a path deeper into the structure. The girl realized the design was shifting around him, responding, reacting. The chamber opened into what used to be the command dome. Transparent walls showed the curve of the night outside the stars, sharp and cold, scattered like spilled glass. Consoles flared. Symbols pulsed in rhythmic patterns she couldn't read but could feel. The hum grew louder, threading into the air like breath. Then everything tilted. A gravitational shiver rippled through the hangar as the ship lifted just a few centimeters. Enough to make every loose tool rattle. Shouts broke out below. Security alarms blinked red. But inside, the ship was calm, steady, poised. The human watched the patterns of light like he was listening to lyrics only he could hear. His lips moved slightly, repeating something inaudible. The lights pulsed in answer. The girl felt her stomach drop. "It's sinking with you," she said, half in wonder, half in alarm. "You're whatever link it ran on back then, you're matching it." "I'm not doing anything," he said quietly. "It feels like it already knows me." That didn't make sense. Nothing about this made sense. Their biological scans confirmed humans were thousands of evolutionary paths away from the ancient race. Rumored to have built these vessels, there was no possible overlap, no genetic thread, no resonant match. And yet there it was, harmony forming between a lost machine and a TAS. A human heart. The hangar's COM channel burst alive with voices demanding they power down. Technicians hustled for safety lines. The ship hovered now, thrumming with restrained potential. Light crawling across every seam, like sunlight over waves. The girl reached out to steady herself, but the moment her hand touched the wall, a flood of sensations burned through her mind. Memories, maybe. Or echoes. Cities like crystal seas. Skies filled with vessels moving like flocks. Then fire. Silence. A sudden cut to emptiness. The weight of ages pressed behind her eyes. She stumbled, catching the edge of a console. The human caught her before she fell. His grip was warm, real, so ordinary compared to the impossible storm surrounding them. "You saw it too," he said softly. She nodded, breath shaking. "The end of them?" He looked around the glowing dome. "Maybe that's why it woke up. Maybe it doesn't want to be alone anymore." Before she could answer, the light flared brilliant white. The entire hangar vanished from sight. Through the translucent walls, the stars twisted as though space itself had turned inside out. Every instrument nearby overloaded in a chorus of alarms. Wind of vacuum could have wind-rushed through her ears. The ship had moved. No, not just lifted, it had gone. The alien girl grabbed hold of the console, her heart thundering. The human stood at the center, calm in the light. As though this was exactly what he'd been waiting for all along. Outside. The stars rearranged themselves into unfamiliar constellations. She swallowed hard, her voice trembling. Where did you take us?" He looked back over his shoulder, eyes reflecting the impossible brightness. "I think," he said slowly, "we've just gone home." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning and fear. The only sound was the endless hum of the ancient ship as if it, too, was holding its breath. A shockwave of silence filled the dome. Space itself seemed to be listening. The alien girl blinked, disoriented, trying to steady her breathing. The deck beneath her feet was to still no hum of the hangar. No outside interference, just the measured vibration of the ancient ship. She dared a glance at the view, and her stomach flipped. The stars had changed. They weren't even close to the ones near Lumia's system anymore. Home? She repeated, her voice small in the wide echo of the chamber. What does that even mean? We've jumped thousands of light years, maybe more. The human's hand slipped slowly from the control surface, as if afraid to disturb whatever fragile connection still held. I didn't mean to, he said. It just felt right. Like the ship asked me to follow a path it remembered. She straightened, flicking her gaze across the glowing panels. The displays moved in languages she couldn't translate, elegant curves drifting over each other like tides. Every so often, a symbol pulsed as if aware of her stare. You followed a feeling, she snapped. You could have killed us both, or worse opened a wormhole inside the hangar. He didn't seem rattled. If anything, she noticed a strange focus in his eyes, calm and distant. It wasn't just a feeling, he murmured. It's like the ship recognized me. Like I fit some pattern it's been waiting to complete. She wanted to argue. The logic refused to cooperate. The energy signature coming from the ship was unlike anything she had seen in years of study. Every reading said it should have been inert. Every equation said it shouldn't have moved. Yet here they were, sitting inside it, surrounded by endless stars that even her navigation implant couldn't identify. The data flickered uselessly on her wrist. They had truly gone off the map. The dome dimmed, light retracting into the veins of the floor as if the ship sensed their growing fear. The silence stretched out until the only sound was her heartbeat and the subtle rhythm of the vessel's core. "What's your name?" she asked suddenly. He blinked at her, caught off guard. "Why?" "Because if we're stuck in a centuries-old relic with no nav fix and possibly no way home, I might want to know who's responsible." His mouth twitched into a faint grin. Rian, she repeated. "Good. Now I know what to put on your official report once this thing stops glowing." He laughed softly, and the tension eased by a fraction. "And you?" She hesitated. "Call me Orin." He nodded, filing the name away. "Orin," he said quietly. "You studied this ship, right? You must have theories about who built it." She stepped closer to the main console, watching the shimmering patterns across its surface. "The usual suspects," she said. "An extinct race we call the Precursors. No one knows where they went, only that they left behind artifacts no one could recreate. This ship was the largest. We think it was a war vessel, but the energy readings never matched known weapon signatures." "Maybe it wasn't a weapon," he said. "Maybe it was a traveler, or both," she muttered. "The problem is, we never figured out how any living thing could interface with it. The systems refuse all biological commands till you." Rian looked at his hands like they belonged to someone else. "I wish I could tell you what I did. It just felt alive, familiar somehow." That word familiar made her pulse quicken. There were old Lumian legends that spoke of the Precursors as celestial gardeners, beings who shaped the early stars and seeded worlds with life. Scholars dismiss the tales as myth, but what if there had been some truth? Could humanity have been one of their projects? Could Rian's resonance with the ship be proof of that? The thought was so bold it scared her. She turned to the view again. The unfamiliar constellations glowed faintly against a dust cloud of violet and deep red, tinged by radiation unlike any she'd recorded before. The ship's sensors gathered data automatically, projecting faint holographic trails that mapped nearby systems. There were planets here, but the readings came with strange interference, like distorted memories. Rian moved to her side. "Think anyone lives out there?" "Maybe once," she said. "Now, I don't know." The ship gave a low vibration then, subtle but insistent. The console shifted into a new pattern. Symbols cascaded downward, rearranging into coordinates. Orin leaned forward. "It's showing a destination." Rian's brow furrowed. "You mean it wants us to go somewhere?" She met his gaze, unsure whether to be awed or afraid. It's plotting a course on its own. A pulse of light answered her, gentle yet firm, like the nod of someone unseen. Rian exhaled slowly. Guess saying no isn't an option. Not unless you've found a way to override ancient alien programming in the last 5 minutes. She muttered as soon as the words left her. The floor gave a slight shudder. Stars outside began to slide, melting into streaks of white. The sensation wasn't of acceleration, but translation, as though reality bent around them instead of pushing them through it. The ship didn't use conventional drives. It folded space like pages of a book. Oren clung to the railing, teeth clenched. "We're moving again." Rian steadied her with one hand. The other pressed against the console that thrummed beneath his fingers. "I think it's taking us to its origin point," he said. His voice was calm again, almost reverent. "Maybe to show us what happened." His certainty sent a chill down her spine. "And if its origin doesn't exist anymore? Then maybe we'll find out why." Minutes or hours, she couldn't tell, drifted past. The shifting colors outside slowed, resolving into a field of soft light. Oren blinked hard, trying to adjust her vision. And then she saw it. Fragments of colossal structures suspended in orbit around a dying star. What looked like an entire civilization broken and scattered, the bones of something once vast. The ship slowed as it approached. Fragments turned lazily in the weak gravity, glinting with ancient metallic skin. Arain's breath caught. This can't be natural devastation. Look at the pattern. Precision strikes. This was a war. Rian frowned. So the precursors destroyed each other. Or someone else destroyed them, she said quietly. The energy scars match no known weapon. It's something beyond what we can replicate. The console flickered again, and a faint projection shimmered into form at the center of the dome. It wasn't solid, more like a ghost of light. A tall figure composed of intertwining patterns appeared, voiceless but filled with sorrow. The hollow image repeated gestures as if conducting a ritual or plea. Arain's chest tightened. The projection bent, placing something unseen into the ship's controls before fading. When the light cleared, the console displayed a single symbol, pulsing steady as a heartbeat. "I think that's a memory," Rian whispered. "Maybe the last thing they recorded." Oren felt a strange resonance in her bones. If this ship remembers their end, maybe it's been searching ever since for someone to finish what they started. Rian's jaw tightened. To rebuild them. She shook her head slowly. Or to stop whatever destroyed them the first time. The idea hung heavy between them. The ship began to hum louder, echoing their unease, filling the dome with a low, mournful tone. The energy readings spiked briefly. Our rain scanners went white with static. When they cleared, a new signal stood out, a transmission on ancient frequencies. Faint but definitely human. Her pulse jumped. "Rian, that's a human distress beacon." He turned sharply. "From Earth. Can't be. The modulation is centuries old. The nearest expedition with a beacon like that vanished 100 years ago." They looked at each other. The silence between them was no longer empty, it was full of realization. The ship had brought them across the stars to a graveyard of an extinct race. Now it was showing them a human call for help, echoing from the ruins of that same place. Rian squared his shoulders. That quiet determination flickering again in his eyes. "Looks like I'm not the first human this thing's been waiting for." Arain's hands trembled over the console. She tried to focus, but questions kept shoving their way to the front of her thoughts. If humans had been here before, how? Why? Had Earth been part of something far larger all along? The ship tilted, setting a new course toward the signal. The dying star glowed ahead, its light bending through the broken remains of once mighty towers. The hum of ancient power grew steadier, deeper. Oren swallowed hard and looked at Rian. "Whatever's out there," she said, "it's not just going to be wreckage." He nodded slowly. "No," he said. "It's an invitation." The stars blurred again as the ship plunged toward the origin of the signal. Outside, fragments of metal slid past like echoes of a forgotten era. Inside, neither of them spoke. The weight of history pressed down on them both, mixing dread and wonder in equal measure as they drew closer. The light from the ruined planet flickered once, twice, and the transmission rose suddenly in volume. It wasn't just a call for help anymore. Underneath the crackle of static, a voice began to form, rough but unmistakably human, whispering words they couldn't quite understand. The ship's core thrummed at the same rhythm, almost answering. Arane's mouth went dry. "It knows that voice," she breathed. Rian stared at the glowing console, realizing the same truth a heartbeat later. The ship wasn't just taking them home. It was bringing them back to something that had been waiting for millennia, something human. Buried deep inside an alien legend and whatever was calling to them from the ruins. It had just noticed they'd arrived. The voice grew clearer with every kilometer they descended into the graveyard of broken worlds. Static gave way to syllables, a rhythm of breath and tone that didn't belong to any automated signal. It was human, raw, and urgent. But what made Arane's skin prickle was the echo in the background, a harmonic pattern identical to the ship's own pulsing core. Like the message was woven out of the same living frequency. The ship drifted silently among ruins the size of continents. Shattered domes, fractured rings, and hollowed towers floated in eternal orbit, glittering faintly in the dim light of the fading star. The scale of it made her chest tighten. Every beam and fragment hinted at a civilization that once believed itself untouchable. Rian studied the console, jaw set in concentration. "The signal is coming from inside one of those structures," he said, "deep below the surface of that central fragment." Arane's pulse jumped. "You're saying someone is alive down there? After all this time?" "Or something," he said quietly. The ship adjusted course without his command, aligning itself toward the largest fragment, an immense crescent of land twisted into the star's glow. As they neared, Oren saw tunnels and ruined ports carved along its edges. The ship slowed, hovering above a circular crater that pulsed faint blue. The signal intensified. Now even the hull vibrated with each wave. Rian glanced at her. "If you don't want to go down there, I understand." She let out a shaky laugh. "You think I came all this way just to stop at the door? Not a chance." Despite the fear curling in her gut, curiosity pulled stronger. The unknown was why she became a researcher. She just hadn't expected the unknown to involve following a long-dead ship into the aftermath of an alien extinction while a ghostly voice called her name through ancient static. The ship extended, a walkway of light that solidified into steps. Gravity readjusted itself as they descended into the ruin. The air, surprisingly, didn't choke them. It was thin but breathable, faintly metallic. Everything glowed with that same hum of living machinery. What they had thought was stone was actually fused technology. Smooth and warm to the touch. "Feels like it's alive," Rian murmured. Running a hand along the wall, "Or remembering," Oren said, as they pressed deeper. Faint lights sparked ahead, leading them downward through halls covered in strange inscriptions. Occasionally she caught a flicker of movement, shadows where none should be, but when she looked, there was nothing. The signal had grown steady now, blooming into an audible voice, repeating something in a language she didn't know. When Rian heard it, he blinked, confused. I can understand it," he said. Her head snapped toward him. "Translate." "What's it saying?" "It's repeating, 'Return the heart. Restore the seed.'" Over and over. She frowned. "The heart of what?" Before he could answer, the corridor widened into a vast chamber. The ceiling soared above them, lost in shadow. At its center floated a great sphere of glassy material, cracked but still glowing faintly. Tendrils of energy reached from it to the walls, pulsing weakly. And at its base, half buried in dust, lay a capsule sleek, metallic, unmistakably human design. Rion's breath caught. That's an Earth-made pod. Oren crouched beside it, brushing away the thin layer of ash that had gathered over time. The side panel bore insignia she didn't recognize, but was undeniably human letters, faded, but legible. The capsule's case was partially open, and within it lay a form covered in silvery material. Her voice faltered. Someone's inside. Rion approached carefully, fitful light reflecting on his face. It shouldn't be possible. The dates this thing must be centuries old, maybe even pre-drift. The form stirred. A soft hiss ran through the chamber as the pod released air, the metallic lid retracting with a low hum. The figure inside took a jagged breath. Human eyes, clouded by time, blinked open. Oren stumbled back, heart hammering. The being inside wasn't aged, not preserved in stasis the way ancient relics normally were. They looked alive. Skin pale, veins faintly silver with some kind of nanotech gleam. When they spoke, their voice trembled through the same frequency as the ship. "You heard the call." Rion knelt beside them. "We followed the signal," he said softly. "Who are you?" The figure's gaze flickered to him, then widened in recognition. "You're the one who opened the gate." "What gate?" Oren demanded. "The link between what was left of us," the stranger said, voice breaking, "and what you became." They looked at Rion again, tears mixing with light. "They left your kind to finish what we could not." Rion froze. The meaning pressed into the air between them like gravity itself. Arane's thoughts spun. "You're saying humans are descended from the precursors?" She whispered. The figure nodded faintly. "The Garden Worlds, seated across the void. We redirected the remnants of our genome, our dreams, our will. Your species was meant to inherit what we could not protect." The revelation crashed through Oren like a tidal wave. Every myth, every academic debate, all connected here, in this hollow room among the stars. Rion's jaw tightened. Protected from what? The figure's breath hitched. The devourers, the ones who turned creation into consumption. We buried ourselves to stop them, but they wake again. Their voice weakened. And now the heart must be restored. The ship you brought it carries it still. Sudden dread hit her. The ship's core. The figure nodded slowly. It is not a machine. It is the heart of our world. Its consciousness fragmented, waiting for a carrier who shared our origin enough to awaken it. That's why it chose you. Rion stared, silent for a long moment. And if we fail, then everything you know burns. The chamber trembled violently. The glow above flared crimson, and a sound like distant thunder filled the air. The figure gasped, eyes snapping wide in terror. "They found us." Oren turned sharply. "Who?" The answer came as a lance of darkness ripping through the walls. Something massive moved outside, a shadowed silhouette flickering against the dying starlight. The ship's warning tone blared faintly through our rains come, rising like a heartbeat gone wild. Outside, more shapes shifted across the debris field, sleek and predatory. Gliding through vacuum with unnatural grace, Rion's instincts kicked in. Back to the ship, now. Oren hesitated, looking at the figure still half lying in the pod. "We can't just leave them." The stranger reached out, eyes pleading. "Take the seed," they whispered, pressing a small crystalline sphere into Aran's hands. "It will know what to do when you reach the bridge." Rion grabbed Arane's arm, pulling her toward the exit just as another tremor ripped through the structure. The walls split, floods of light pouring through. They sprinted through collapsing halls. fragments of debris exploding around them in bursts of silent fire by the time they reached the exterior rung where the ship waited. One of the dark vessels had broken orbit and was descending. It held no visible engines, just emptiness, bending space around itself as it moved. Its presence felt wrong, like gravity turned inside out. Rian ushered Orin up the ramp. The moment they stepped aboard, the ship came alive with roaring energy. The hum of its heart deepened into something almost furious. Rian dropped into the pilot's seat and slammed his hand to the console. The ship responded instantly, shields blooming just as a beam of darkness struck them. Energy cascaded around the hull, groaning like a wounded beast. "What are they?" Orin shouted over the vibration. "Hunters," Rian said grimly, echoing the dying precursor's last word. "They're drawn to the heart's power." Another hit rocked the ship sideways. Panels sparked. Alarms flared red. Through the dome, Orin saw more of the creatures or ships, or both, forming from nothing, surrounding them like living shadows. The crystal in her hand pulsed faster, resonating with the ship's core. She clutched it tightly, feeling warmth bloom through her palm, and felt the vessel react like the two pieces recognized each other. Rian glanced at her. "That thing, whatever it is, keep it safe." The ship banked sharply, diving between shards of ancient wreckage as the hunters fired beams that tore holes through floating metal. The sight was hypnotic deathlight, swallowing light in silence. Yet the ship moved as if guided by instinct, weaving pathways through collapsing debris. Arain's eyes went wide as the crystal's pulse synced perfectly with the ship's rhythm. She sensed a thought, distant yet intimate, whisper through her mind. It was neither human nor aliens, something vast and old, speaking without words. Awake again, but broken still. ... She gasped, nearly dropping the crystal. Rian shot her a quick look, but couldn't slow the ship to ask outside. One of the shadow vessels closed in, tendrils reaching for their hull. The interior lights flickered wildly. The ancient ship shuddered, the hum deepening to a thunderous drumbeat, as if awakening more of itself with every pulse. Arain's voice trembled. "It's trying to merge the heart with the seed, but it needs a catalyst." Rian gritted his teeth, steering hard to evade another surge of dark energy. "Whatever that means, do it fast." The crystal burned hotter in her grip, its light crawling up her wrist. The ship screamed a deep vibration that rattled her bones, and the hunters drew closer. For a moment, the light between the crystal and the core formed a bridge, alive and trembling, linking her heartbeat with the ship's. She didn't understand how, but she felt everything: its pain, its fury, its desperate strength. Rian braced himself, turning the ship toward the largest fragment of the precursor ruins, a structure that looked eerily like a gate. "I hope this thing remembers how to fight," he muttered. The ship responded not with weapons, but with a surge of radiant energy bursting outward like dawn. The hunters recoiled, their dark forms flickering as if melting under the brightness. Then, just as quickly, the light dimmed. Systems faltered. The gate ahead began to open, revealing a blinding spiral of unknown space. Arain's eyes met his. "If we go through that, there's no turning back." Rian's grip tightened on the controls. "Then let's not waste the chance they died for." Behind them, the dark void roared closer. In front, the spiral grew brighter, hungering. The ancient ship trembled, as if caught between its own memories and the universe demanding something more. And just as the first shadow hand reached their hull, the ship made its choice, diving straight into the light, dragging their fates along with it. The light swallowed everything. For a moment, Orin couldn't tell what was up or down, only the sensation of falling through brightness so dense it felt alive. The sound was gone. Even their own breathing vanished. The ship's hum stretched into infinity, a single note held by an unseen hand. Then, as suddenly as it began, the light broke apart and they were flung into stillness. Rion's eyes blinked open first. The stars outside were wrong again, beautiful beyond sense. They hung in clusters like veins of glass, colors swirling through space as if the universe itself remembered bleeding. Threads of golden light wove between distant orbs, pulsating faintly. And at the center of that vast pattern was a world small, blue-white, and glowing from within. Aurain's hand trembled as she checked the consoles. We've been transported again. But this isn't any charted system. The coordinates are, she stopped, eyes widening. They're looping back on themselves. It's like we've jumped inside some kind of dimensional fold. The ship drifted forward, orbiting the glowing planet below. Rion leaned closer to the viewport, his voice almost reverent. "It looks alive." "It is," she said. "Energy readings off the scale. The core of that planet tits identical to the resonance of the crystal." As if hearing her, the crystal answered with a flicker of light from inside her pocket. Its pulse matched the planet's rhythm, exactly. The synchronization was no coincidence. The ship slowed until it hung in still orbit. The artificial calm was worse than silence. They both stood in the command dome, feeling watched. Rion exhaled, tension breaking through his voice. "That thing we escaped from the hunters, they followed us through. I can feel it." Aki nodded grimly. "And whatever they are, they're not just after the ship's power. They feed on it, maybe even need it." The ship shuddered, almost as if agreeing. Warning symbols crawled across the displays. Distant gravitational distortions were forming along the horizon, through the transparent dome. Faint streaks of shadow began to emerge, black shapes folding into existence. Like ink spreading through water. 1, then 2, then dozens. The hunters had found them again. Aurain's breath hitched. They came through the gate after all. "They don't stop," Rion muttered, gripping the controls. The ship responded with a deep vibration. "Then we finish this here." She wanted to protest, but she saw the resolve in him, the quiet steadiness that had carried them this far. Whatever he had awakened when he touched the ship, it was still with him. He was the only one it listened to. The hunters moved like living shadows, no engines, no visible structure. Just outlines of hunger. They circled the planet, silent and patient. Orin watched them through the viewfield, her heart hammering. They're forming a containment ring. Rion adjusted dials quickly. They're going to starve out the world, cut it off from the light. Before she could answer, the ship jolted. Symbols flared across the walls, and a voice not sound, but meaning filled her mind again. The heart must return. The seed will awaken what sleeps beneath. The crystal burned against her skin. She pulled it free and held it up. The entire command dome brightened in response. The planet below pulsed brighter too, as if rejoicing that its lost fragment had come home. Rion turned toward her. "It's calling to you." Aurain's throat tightened. "No, it's calling to us. Both of us. We're part of whatever happens next." He hesitated. "If we go down there, we might not come back." She gave a short, shaky laugh. "Considering we've already outrun extinction, I'd say not going sounds worse." He smiled faintly. It wasn't brave, not really, it was acceptance. Then he triggered descent. The ship tilted, breaking orbit. The atmosphere of the glowing planet wrapped around them instantly, streaked with light instead of fire. Below, continents shaped like petals stretched against the ocean of color. There were cities too, or what was left of them, massive spirals of silver covered in vines of glass and light. Everything pulsed faintly, like veins through the body of a sleeping world, as they descended. Orin caught glimpses of movement along the horizon. Machines, massive ones half submerged in liquid crystal, stirring sluggishly as if sensing their arrival. They had shapes similar to the hunters, but older and cracked. Fragments of something even the precursors hadn't fully controlled. The ship set down gently in what looked like a field of glass grass. The surface glowed under their boots. No wind, no sound. Only that steady heartbeat rhythm in the air. Rion stepped forward first, scanning the horizon. Feels like walking through someone's dream. Oren laughed softly, nerves fraying. Let's hope they don't wake up angry. They didn't get far before the crystal's light began pulling her. It tugged inward, gently but insistent, toward a massive canyon cut deep into the earth. At its center glowed a structure that mirrored the ship's design: a spire, broken but still alive. Looks like a control nexus, she said. If the heart's supposed to be restored, that's where it belongs. Rion glanced skyward. Through the thin veil of atmosphere, the hunters were descending. Black streaks cut through the stars, silent, methodical. The countdown had begun. The ship remained above, hovering protectively, systems at full power. It's guarding us, Rion said. Until it can't, Oren replied. They ran toward the canyon. Every step took them closer to something ancient and furious. Energy fields flickered around them, echoes of memories replaying in the air, images of tall, luminous beings working, laughing, then panicking as darkness devoured their skies. The air stank of history repeating itself. The canyon's center opened like a wound. The spire waited there, split open, its core empty, the exact shape of the crystal in Orion's hand. Rion looked from the hollow core to her, understanding dawning. It's not just a map. It's a key. She nodded, struggling to breathe. Once it's placed, I think we'll trigger whatever the precursors left hidden here, or blow it up. Possible. Above them, a deep vibration rolled through the clouds. The ship was fighting. She looked up just in time to see a wave of shadow slam into it. Energy shields flared. The sound of its strain reached them even down here, a distant roar that resonated through bone. Rion turned toward the spire. No more waiting. He took the crystal from her gently, their fingers brushing, a quick burst of warmth through the cold air. Then he stepped into the hollow chamber, light curling around him as if recognizing something in his genes. Orion's breath caught. The structure began to shift. Plates unfolded, threads of golden energy reaching up toward the heavens. The sound deepened, a pulse rising into thunder. The entire canyon trembled. Rion gasped as the crystal fused to the core. For one impossible moment, all of space seemed to still. The planet's crust brightened in veins of molten white, energy surging outward in rings. The hunters above froze mid-approach. Then, slowly, their forms changed, shifting into something that looked less like ships and more like distortions of space itself. Each one opened, revealing a blazing core. Oren staggered backward, shielding her eyes. The air rippled with heat and pressure. The world itself was waking up. Rion shouted over the rising hum, his voice lost under the chaos. It's merging with Mai, can feel it. She tried to reach him, but an invisible force shoved her back. The ground fractured beneath her feet. The sky turned white. The ship swooped low suddenly, struggling to hold position as gravity bent itself around them. Oren caught the faint outline of its hull before another wave of light engulfed the canyon through the radiance. She could barely make out Rion's silhouette. He was still standing, or floating, encased in streams of gold and blue energy curling around his body. His eyes shone like liquid daylight. The ancient voice rippled through her again, clearer, more human this time. The heart remembers its maker. The gate awaits one chosen by both pasts. She stumbled forward, numb from awe. The hunters began to move again, but their forms wavered, split and reptilian, twisted by their desperation to feed. The energy from the planet clashed with their shadows, tearing the nearest one apart in an instant. Still, more came. Oren forced herself closer to Rian. "You can't hold this alone," she shouted, though her words were swallowed by light. His voice came back through the hum, calm but strained. "It's not just me. It's us, all of us. You, the ship. Every fragment they left behind. But I need time." The planet's energy surged again, erupting into pillars that reached orbit. The ship fired bursts of bright plasma, shielding the surface even as its own hull began to fracture under the force. The light faded slowly this time, not with violence, but with exhaustion like the end of a storm. Oren opened her eyes to silence. The canyon was gone, replaced by a field of silver ash stretching to an endless horizon. The air shimmered faintly, heavy with warmth and static. She was lying on her back, the sky above painted in soft gold. The massive shadow that once filled it had vanished. No devourer, no hunters. Only the steady pulse of the world beneath her, alive again. For a long moment, she couldn't move. The memory of the explosion, the impossible light, and Ryan's blazing figure burned behind her eyelids. She sat up, swaying slightly. Pieces of crystal floated gently through the air, catching the sunlight like drifting snow. The wreckage of the ship rested a short distance away, its hull scorched, wings folded, but intact enough to recognize her friend's mark on the pattern of its metal. "Rian?" She called out, the word breaking in her throat. No answer. The quiet was not empty, though. It was peaceful, resonant, like the world was humming softly in gratitude. She stumbled toward the wreckage, brushing her hand along the warm metal as if expecting it to breathe. Inside, the systems flickered weakly to life. The same voice that had once filled her head spoke again, gentler now. "He is not gone, Oren of Lumia." He became the bridge. Her knees hit the ground, heart stalling. "What do you mean?" "A bridge. The human heart can bind what logic divides." Through him, the seed and the heart met. The devourer was undone by what it could never. Understand-connection. It took her several breaths to steady herself enough to absorb the words. The glow beyond the viewport shifted, drawing her gaze toward the horizon. There, standing atop a rise of shining rock, a figure waited silhouetted in the light, tall, familiar. She ran before she realized she was moving. The ground rippled like water under her boots, but held firm. The figure turned as she approached, his outline sharpening against the glow. He looked the same, and yet not. His eyes carried the same steady warmth, but beneath it lived something vast, a reflection of the ship's ancient intelligence, of the world's memory. Still, when he smiled, the humanity in him shone through. "Rian?" she whispered. "It's me," he said, voice soft but filled with echoes. Mostly, anyway. She laughed, sharp and unsteady, then half collapsed against him. His touch was warm and solid. "You actually did it. You stopped them. We stopped them," he corrected. "You, me, the ship, the precursors, every thread of them that still existed. The heart is whole again. The devourer's link is broken." Oren pulled back to study his face. "And the hunters?" "Gone," he said, glancing upward. "Unraveled when the source vanished. Like shadows at sunrise." The relief hit her so hard she had to look away, eyes stinging. "Then it's over. For now," he said. There was weight in his tone, but also hope. "The balance is restored. This world will heal, and maybe the others will too." They stood together in silence, watching as the sky gradually shifted from gold to deep indigo. The ruins around them hummed quietly, rebuilding themselves under invisible hands. The energy that had once fueled destruction now fed renewal. Vines of light snaked across the ground, weaving patterns that pulsed like living art. Oren finally broke the stillness. "The ship's still functional. We can go home." He was quiet for a moment. "You can." The way he said it made her stomach twist. "You're not coming with me?" Rian reached up, tracing a faint glow that lingered across his palm. I can't. The heart isn't separate from me anymore. I'm part of this world now, its connection, its guardian. She shook her head fiercely. You're human. You have to come back. Earthloomy people need to know. They will, he said gently. You'll tell them. Her voice broke. You'll fade, won't you? He smiled, the kind that made her chest ache. No. I'll be here, just not like before. Think of me as the frequency between stars. Every time someone asks what's out there and dares to find out, I'll be the echo that answers. He looked past her toward the ship, where faint light shimmered at its bow. There's a record stored inside. Everything we sound, everything the precursors wanted you to know. The truth about what connects our species, about how life reached all those garden worlds. Why me? She whispered. Because you still believe in wonder, he said. And wonder is the only thing that scares the devourer more than power. Orin closed her eyes, tears catching light as they fell. The hum around them grew softer, like a heartbeat slowing into calm. She felt his hand on her shoulder, then the warmth began to fade. When she opened her eyes, the air shimmered where he had stood, threads of light dissolving into the wind. And then he was gone, leaving only that radiant silence. She stayed like that for a long time, staring at the empty horizon. Slowly, she gathered herself and walked back to the ship. Inside, the systems had stabilized. The main console pulsed with faint blue light, waiting for her touch. She hesitated, then placed her hand on it. The voice of the ship spoke one last time, now in Rian's tone. You're not alone out there, Orin. Everything alive carries part of the first breath. Remember that. She swallowed hard, whispering, I'll remember. The engines warmed beneath her boots, a deep rolling purr. Outside, the world shone brighter, sending streaks of energy into the sky that spiraled across space like new constellations being born. As the ship lifted through the upper atmosphere, she watched the surface recede below, living planet reborn, glowing against the black. Stars bent overhead as the ship accelerated beyond the orbit. The coordinates stabilized, showing real space markers again. It was time to return. The trip back was quieter than she expected. She had traveled through impossible distances, witnessed extinction and creation, heard a machine speak with a human soul, and yet the quiet hum of the engines felt exactly like home. She thought of Lumia, of the research teams that would never believe a single word until they saw it. She smiled faintly. They'd see Dars later. Her sensors picked up familiar alignments, known constellations. The soft pulse of nearby colonies. The CUM systems buzzed with static before finally clearing into human chatter. She felt a knot of relief loosen in her chest when the ship broke through the last jump corridor and entered the station's range. The automated welcome beacon pinged. She answered with her name and registry number. The controller on the other end nearly dropped his headset when she identified her ship. Orin, you've been missing for 23 cycles. Where have you been? She looked out the viewport at the distant sun, glowing the same gold she'd left behind. Her reflection overlapped. It told her now, eyes brighter. I've been learning where we came from, she said softly. And maybe where we're going. The hangar lights blinked faintly ahead, guiding her home. As she descended, she closed her eyes, hearing again Rian's last words echo in her memory. You're not alone out there. When the ship finally touched down, the deck crews surged forward, cheering and shouting questions. She stepped down the ramp slowly, breathing in the familiar metallic air of the station. It smelled like effort and life and human stubbornness. Someone asked her what happened beyond the gate. She paused, searching for a way to explain everything that had changed the precursors. The world that healed, the human who became its heart. Finally, she smiled. You wouldn't believe me yet, she said. But look up tonight. There'll be a new star in the eastern sky. And there was. weeks later when she finished her official report. She left out the classified details about weapons, technology, and energy sources. What she sent instead was a message of connection, how everything that lived was part of a story stretching across time. How the same spark that lit the first minds still burned quietly in humanity. The scientists would argue over it. The governments would debate its implications. But deep within the quiet corners of the cosmos, Rion's world turned peacefully on its axis, its light threading through the universe again, on clear nights. Oren would step out onto the observation deck and watch that faint glow between stars. Sometimes she swore she could hear a heartbeat under the hum of the station. It wasn't the sound of machines or memory, it was the rhythm of creation continuing, handwritten in human persistence. She smiled toward the infinite dark, whispered, "See you, pilot," and let the silence answer. Beyond her reflection, the stars burned brighter as if someone out there, still watching, had smiled back.